So we're now back live on YouTube for the Quebec Day for the Regional Week presented by VECA and our gold sponsor Everlast. Donc, pour les francophones qui se joignent à nous, donc on a plusieurs présentations en français aujourd'hui. Celle-ci va être plutôt en anglais. Par contre, si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez les poser en français ou en anglais, ça ne dérange pas, puis on va pouvoir traduire là, à mesure. Donc, so Al, I just mentioned, well, I know you understand French, so you know what I mentioned.
I understood what you said. Yes, thank you.
So, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, today is a presentation you gave to other regions too, but now
Yes.
like it's more catered to Quebec. And I just want to mention for questions, if you have questions, if any of you have questions along the way, either be it on YouTube, people watching on YouTube right now, or in the Zoom call, just write your questions while Al is presenting. So then if we have questions at the end, we'll ask them. I'll let you know at the end of your presentation.
And we're going to have two presentations today, starting with a short update on the public review of changes to the National Building Code. So ask those questions using the chat function or the Q&A function, actually.
Yeah.
The question and answer function in Zoom. You can ask those questions during that presentation. We'll answer them at the end. And then our main topic is going to be an update on the Natural Resources Canada Market Transformation Program. So again, we'll have a separate question and answer on that second presentation as well.
Perfect. Okay, so you can go ahead, and I'll leave you to it.
Thank you. So this is a short update on the public review process that we were participated in earlier this year. The public review period was from January 13th to March 13th of 2020. And all of the code changes in this public review focused on stricter energy performance requirements in large buildings and small buildings, as well as the introduction of tiered steps, better than base code levels. And this is a new concept in the National Building Code. And they're basically following the approach that it was first introduced in British Columbia in the BC Energy Step Code, where the building code now will have not just a base code level, but there will be defined steps that will eventually be future code steps. But the plan of a tiered code is that by defining the future in the code in advance, it allows municipalities to adopt one of the higher tiers independently of the national code. So this is a new concept, and I think there's some really good ideas behind that kind of an approach, but that's just my opinion. Fenestration Canada and other associations submitted comments on some of the changes that we felt concerned our industry. And so we're going to report here on the process. The public review ended in March, and in late May, the standing committees began to review the comments. And the plan was to have all of that process finished by the end of June. However, there was so much feedback from various elements of industry that the committees have been working, you might say, overtime. It's not that they're working longer days, but it's stretching out through the summer, really. Some of the committees are still meeting now. And so because of this, the publication date of the 2020 National Code has now been postponed to December 2021. Jeff Baker has been monitoring the work of these committees for several associations that are funding his work. And so my comments today are based on his report that we received at the end of August. So these are some of the changes that our industry, and when I say our industry, some of these Fenestration Canada and also other fenestration associations. And basically, when we talk about large buildings, the energy requirements for large buildings are in the National Energy Code for Buildings, which is a separate document from the National Building Code. So National Energy Code for Buildings had a proposed change number 1414 that was going to reduce the allowable air leakage through doors dramatically. Right now, we're familiar that, doors have an air leakage level of A2 or A3. They wanted to reduce that level to almost the level of a fixed window. And they also wanted the entrance doors to buildings to be about as airtight as an A3 level. And these really concerned the industry because the industry felt it was not wise for an energy code to require air leakage rates that are not even tested under the industry standards. And also that are very practically very difficult to achieve. There's the odd product that can do that, but it's not typical of the products in the industry. Basically, the task group that reviewed the industry feedback agreed to reverse it. And we're hoping that that's what the standing committee will do. The decision had not been made yet as of the time of the report that we received. The other big change to the National Energy Code was reduction in the U factors of fenestration products. So just 2 years ago, in the middle of the code cycle for the National Energy Code for Buildings, they reduced the U values, and now they were going to reduce them again just 2 years later. So the industry was concerned that these changes are happening too fast for the product development to keep up. And so there was some pushback. And there was a related change that really concerned the industry as well, which was proposed change 1541, reductions in the fenestration and door to wall ratio. This is the window to wall ratio as it's described in the National Energy Code for Buildings. So both of these the industry had concerns with, because taken together, they would make a dramatic reduction in the U values from fenestration. And the industry felt we just don't have the products yet to meet that need. So the standing committee agreed to withdraw the reductions to the fenestration to door and wall ratio. And the industry agreed to a compromise where door U values would remain unchanged, but lower U values for other products were going to be okay. So it looks like that's the direction that these two changes are going to take. The last changes I'll talk about are the Part 9 changes. And these, for small buildings, the energy requirements, the tiered energy requirements are actually in Part 9. Whereas, as I said, for large buildings, the energy requirements are in a separate code document. So there were two proposed changes that were very contentious that introduced stepped or tiered requirements in Part 9. There was a prescriptive approach, which would let builders score points. They would choose specific energy conservation measures, and that would allow them to accumulate points. And if you accumulated enough points, then you would qualify for a higher tier of energy performance. The idea here was that this doesn't require an energy model for each building. The other proposed change, 1617, introduced tiered energy performance requirements, but these required HOT 2000 building models for every building. And you would achieve higher levels of performance by having a more energy efficient building than based on the energy model. There were other changes associated with these things, not just the introduction of these tiered levels, but the details were very concerning to much of the industry. There were also mandatory air tightness testing and other measures that really concerned the builders especially. So the Part 9 committee and the joint task group of energy efficiency and Part 9 committee members have been continuing to meet to work through these issues in great detail. So we're hoping this process will be completed, this fall, And but at this point, we really can't report on the outcome of some of these changes just because it's taking much longer than usual. This really was a massive change to the energy requirements in the code, and that's what's causing them, takes longer to digest that and to process it into the code. Do we have any questions on that, Steph?
No, there's no questions as of now.
Okay. So that's our quick update on where we're at there. I'm now going to share I'd say the main presentation for this morning, which is to give you folks an update on the Natural Resources Canada Market Transformation Roadmap. We're going to look at the process that NRCan has been following and where we're at on that process now. It's been kind of quiet for the last year, and so people might be wondering, is that process still on? Well, it's definitely back on track and moving. And then we're going to look at sort of where is the industry at in terms of our capacity to reach the 2030 aspirational goals. We've taken a deep dive into the Energy Star database to see if we can learn something about the status of in the industry capacity to make progress on those goals. And we'd like to share that with you today. You might find that interesting. And again, just a reminder, if you have questions, please use the question and answer function in Zoom, and we'll be happy to take your questions at the end of this presentation. So in June, I was a part of a webinar with members of the industry that are involved with this market transformation roadmap for energy efficient equipment in the building sector. And as you can see by the title of the slide here, it was an implementation launch. They are now implementing the market transformation program beyond just consultations to actually start meeting with industry groups in 3 sectors to try and make progress on this project. In that presentation, the presenter reviewed how we got here. What was it that led to the development of this market transformation roadmap? And then where are we going? There's a new governance structure, and there are organizational elements in place to make this thing work. And we're going to describe that to you. First of all, they reviewed how we got here, and I think it's worth us taking a quick review as well. This effort was launched in early 2017 by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments working under the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference. And this started in early 2017, and I think pretty much we've been hearing about it since then as well. If folks are connected to the industry associations, you've heard something about this over the past few years. They went through a prioritization exercise that identified 3 equipment areas that they felt were necessary, that needed to have significant improvements in order to help Canada achieve their climate change goals. They felt they needed to focus on residential windows, which account for up to 35% of home heat losses. They felt that we needed to tackle space heating, which is the largest source of energy consumption in the building sector, and also water heating, the second largest source of energy consumption in the building sector. So they felt that in addition to building code requirements that would increase insulation levels in buildings, improving the performance of products in these 3 sectors would be very important in achieving those goals. And at the time, they outlined aspirational goals for the short, medium, and long-term performance targets for these 3 equipment areas. And they also identified the need for a market transformation program to help these industries actually build capacity and to introduce the highest possible performing products over a time period of approximately 10 years. In the summer of 2019, they were involved in activities to identify gaps in that would be relevant to the activities of the roadmap, to prioritize areas that they should work on, to create a work plan, and you might say budgeting to fund this process. And then in the fall and winter of 2019, they put together an advisory committee and basically aligned the plan with available funding sources for project implementation. This is, I guess you could say, background work to prepare for actually getting down to work with industry groups to make progress on this project. And the plan was to start implementing this work plan in 2020, and 2021. In this process, they also, I just thought I'd mention this, I've sort of pulled this slide out from that presentation, that they've initiated a lay of the land exercise where they basically want to get an idea of what's going on in the industry. Where are we at? So they began scanning existing public sources of projects and information that were relevant to this market transformation program, to capture the various activities being supported in various parts of the country, in industry, in academia, incentive programs that are used by utilities and governments across the country. And the lay of the land idea is, they need to know where are we at in terms of what the capacity of the industry, as well as existing initiatives that are trying to help this industries, all three of these industries, move to higher levels of energy efficiency. And the idea was to identify, initiatives that could be supported to build capacity, and also to try and avoid duplication, identify gaps, and share progress and lessons learned, and so on. And then the idea was that what we learned from this lay of the land information would be provided to the teams that actually work in these three industry areas. At the time, they were calling them implementation teams. They're now calling them experts teams. So basically, some spring and summer and fall of 2019 was preparatory work for 2020, when actually they were hoping to begin rolling out new projects with specific work plans to make progress towards the aspirational goals. But the election that was called in the fall of 2019 put this process on hold. And so we really, haven't heard much since last fall about this. It was only, as I said, between last fall and June, it was this June when they actually restarted the process in a more, in a way that started involving industry participants, such as our own association and my own role with this. But during this time, we tried to stay in touch as Fenestration Canada, and Steph had arranged a meeting. We met with NRCan in Ottawa to just check in with them and see what was happening, and let them know that we're very much interested, as Fenestration Canada, to be involved in this process. We invited them to participate at our spring conference, and Kimberly Kern, Chief of Standards Development from NRCan, spoke at our conference about the pros and cons of regulation and market transformation. And in August 11th, I was invited to the webinar not just a webinar, it was a virtual meeting, really to restart this market transformation roadmap work. So during this August meeting, virtual meeting, we learned that they have a new staff project coordinator who is actually going to be the interface between the three industry groups, the space heating group, the water heating group, and the windows group. We're working with Ashley, who is kind of our point of contact in terms of communications and logistics for meetings and so on. So he's set up a Microsoft Teams environment that we're all going to be meeting in and working in. They've completed their first run of this lay of the land approach, where they're trying to get an idea, essentially, what's happening across the country in terms of initiatives and programs related to energy efficient appliances in the water heating area, space heating area, and the window technology area. Looked into this database myself. It seems to me at this point mainly a list of government and utility incentive plans, rebate plans, things like that, that are intended to help to increase the demand for high-performing products. But there's also information and links to research that is taking place not only in Canada, but in other places in the world related to energy efficient products in these areas. At this webinar, they also, not a webinar, like I say, it was a virtual meeting. They reviewed the typical steps of a market transformation roadmap. And I'll just review that with you, because this is the perspective through which they're looking at the progress that these three industry areas are making to the introduction of products with higher performing capabilities. And the idea is that there's already a defined roadmap process that governments use to increase the uptake of new technologies from the research and development stage all the way through to a point where they can be implemented in codes and standards. And it starts out with research and development, product development, laboratory and field testing. It goes on to demonstration projects where you try to assess the acceptability of solutions to the consumer, deal with installation or implementation issues. As these things get worked out, there are programs to provide information and awareness, marketing and education, things, labeling programs. So this is kind of where Energy Star fits in, is that, there are defined test procedures for identifying the performance of products. There are labeling programs to identify the most energy efficient products. There's consumer education encouraging people why they should use the more energy efficient products. If necessary, then there's training. If there is training or education or certification needed for the installers of these products, then there are incentive programs rolled out, rebates and cost supports to make these products more affordable and to encourage the public to begin to use them. And the idea is that as you move down this process, the more and more manufacturers are bringing out products at this higher performance level. The market, the industry's capacity to introduce these products and the public's use of the products grows to a point where now building codes can start to implement that level of performance because there's already industry capacity. There's already products available, manufacturers know how to build them, and it's a case now of scaling up the capacity, and that's where the building codes come in to now create demand for this product by essentially requiring that level of performance as the code level of performance. So in this context, they gave updates of recent activities over the past year for space heating, water heating and windows. For windows, they basically just updated everyone that the new Energy Star specification came into effect this January of this year. And the minimum energy performance level for Energy Star is now 1 zone, a U factor of 1.22. There's also an energy rating path. But the U value level of Energy Star today is where was the aspirational goal for 2025 for the market transformation aspirational goals for Windows. They also engaged in consultations with the AVFQ, the Fenestration Association of BC and Fenestration Canada. They also now reported on the governance structure of this program. So at the top, we have the Federal, Provincial, and Territorial Steering Committee. As you folks may or may not know, it's the it's the provincial and territorial governments that actually administer construction in Canada. So building codes exist at the provincial and territorial level. And so the Federal, Provincial, and Territorial Steering Committee is basically the heads of the provincial and territorial authorities and the federal government authorities that are tackling this program. Below that is a Roadmap Advisory Council. And then below that are these 3 expert teams that are actually going to be actively working with each of these industry areas to make progress on the roadmap or to monitor how things are going. The role of the expert teams, there's 3 elements here. They're looking for these teams to provide technical input and assessment of existing activities that are there to support the roadmap. So they're looking to these committees, to us, for feedback on how, what is capable, what our industry can do, and also assessing the existing initiatives that are supporting these things to identify gaps, to identify obstacles, to identify opportunities that could help the industry get there faster. It's also to provide a forum to share share experience and identify new activities that could be helping either research, development, or deployment. And 3, to address the main barriers to the adoption of these new technologies. So I've been appointed as the co-chair with Rob Singlehurst of Natural Resource Canada. So each of these committees has an industry co-chair and a government co-chair. Up until this stage, Jeff Baker was involved as the co-chair, and now that he stepped back from his role at Fenestration Canada, I've been appointed a co-chair in his place. It's my understanding that the co-chair roles are going to be reviewed every year, so it's not like this is a permanent lifetime appointment. The idea is to have rotating participation here, because this process is going to take years. It could be in place, for the full 10 years of this aspirational process. They also outlined at this August meeting that they are planning to hold regional workshops to engage local experts and stakeholders across the country. So they're planning to conduct at least 6 of them over a 2-year period, and they will involve industry organizations, experts, and representatives from all levels of government, industry, academia, and so on. They're hoping that these regional workshops will lead to regional blueprints that could identify regional issues, so that at the regional level, there's going to be participation, consultation, and assistance. And the second thing is they want these expert teams to help them develop annual progress reports to the higher level organizations, ultimately to the federal, provincial, and territorial government entities that are leading this initiative. And so they're looking to use the scorecard approach that they've described a few years ago, where they looked at each of these sectors and identified technologies from the various technologies available and what level they're at in terms of industry adoption. So NRCan is looking to start the conversation with our industry this fall. We sent out invitations to the Windows expert team members, people that we had determined should be on that list. We started with a list that Jeff Baker was working on, and we've basically modified that list to expand it to include some sectors that were not previously represented there. And sent out invitations this past weekend, and most of the people have already responded to accept. The first meeting of the experts team will be the week of October 12th. And the next advisory council meeting will be October 21st. So this process is now definitely getting underway. That's the takeaway from today's chat here, is just to remind those of you who have wondered why we haven't heard much in the last year of what's going on. For those of you that have not heard about this process, this is maybe your first introduction to it, but this is something you'll probably be hearing updates about at industry meetings regularly in the coming years. And so because the process here is to help the industry move forward, and they've talked about the lay of the land. Where are we at, across the country with these industry segments? I've asked myself the question here at Fenestration Canada: where are we at on the market transformation roadmap? What is the level of technology that we're using? What's the highest level of energy performance that our industry is capable of delivering today with respect to U values? And what do we know about where we're at today? And because we'd like to, as we'd like to know whether the aspirational goals that were announced in this process, where they actually outlined, what they thought in 2018 was the capacity of the industry. Where are we at as a window industry on that roadmap? I thought it's worth trying to get some data. And the only source of data that I'm aware of is the Energy Star database. So for those of you who have not seen this approach before, in this market transformation roadmap, they want to make sure that all of these categories are addressed. Is the technology exist? Is it available? Is it accessible? Does the market have access to the technology? But having access is one thing, awareness is another. Are people in the industry aware of how the technology can be implemented? And then affordability, is it affordable? And finally, acceptance. Is the form, fit, and function of the technology acceptable to the end user, to the consumer at the very end? So they did this kind of a scorecard for space heating, for water heating, and for windows. And as of their 2018 report, they thought windows with a U factor of 1.6. In terms of their aspirational goals, they felt that this was the kind of the baseline, that we're moving from. And yes, there's no problem. We know how to make windows at this level. No problems here. Their aspirational goal for 2025 was windows with a U factor of 1.2 as being widely available across Canada. And they felt there was some uncertainty. Does the market know how to get to 1.2? They felt it was to some extent. Is it affordable? Well, to some extent, but they really didn't feel that this was something we were quite ready to do yet. And then when they look at the 2030 aspirational goal, where the average window U factor of all residential windows for sale in Canada would be at the 0.8 level, they felt there was considerable uncertainty. Does the technology exist? They felt to some extent. Does the market have access to it? To some extent. Does the market know about the technology? No. Is the technology affordable? No. And is the form, fit, and function of the technology acceptable? They weren't sure. It looked like they were under the impression that we need a technology that we don't really have, that we're not really using yet today, to get to this level. So where are we at? Does that scorecard that we just looked at represent where we're really at as an industry in 2018? And if it did, does it represent where the industry is at in 2020? So to explore this question, we looked into this database. We downloaded the most recent version of the database, which was dated June 5th of 2020. And we looked at the whole database, but we thought, let's look at the category of products that qualify to Energy Star most efficient. So Energy Star has two levels. There's the base level of Energy Star, and then there is a most efficient category that highlights the products that have the highest performance level. And we filtered and summarized the data from the database to see what we can learn about the highest performing products. So Energy Star has defined the most efficient level of performance as products that have a U factor of USI metric 1.05 or in inch pounds 0.18. So that's the gateway. If you can't meet that level, you're not in most efficient. And in the database, we found that when you isolate all the records that are at this level of performance or better, we had products going from 1.05 all the way down to 0.65, and from inch pound U values of 0.18 all the way down to 0.11. So this was the first discovery, is that we already have products that in the database today that have U factors lower than 1.05. If we look at the aspirational goal for 2030, we see that there are products in the database today that are at the 2030 level. And we also have products that perform at U factors even lower than that. This was interesting to discover. If we look at how many records there are, how many manufacturers are participating in the Energy Star database, and how many products are there, if we look at the records in the database, and by a record, I mean it's one row of data. So it's a manufacturer, it's a product line, it's within that product line, there could be anywhere from 1 or 2 to 30 or 40 or 100 individual glass combinations. So every individual glass combination for that product is a record. So the database has this 366,000 records. 39% of it, for 143,000, are most efficient records. And if we look at the ones that are qualifying for most efficient under U value only, we're looking at 128,000 records, or 35% of all the records in the database. So you could say a third of all the records are already are most efficient. If we look at the number of manufacturers involved, there are 358 manufacturers in the Energy Star program as of June. 282 of those manufacturers have products in the most efficient category, and 270 of them have products that are most efficient by U value only. So this is interesting because it tells us that 270 of the manufacturers, or 3/4 of all the manufacturers who have Energy Star products today, 3/4 of them already have products at the level of most efficient. This was very interesting because it shows our industry has significant participation in the in supplying very high performance products today. And in terms of how many manufacturers there are in Canada, we don't have an exact handle on that, but some people feel it's around 400. And if that's the case, potentially, 270 of 400 manufacturers are currently offering very high performance products. There might be more than 270, but it's only the people in the Energy Star program that we know about. So this is showing that we are significantly invested in very high performance products today. Let's look a little deeper into the data now and look at how many actual product lines, because just because we have 300,000 records in the database, doesn't mean we have 300,000 products. The actual number of product lines is lower. And so here we're going to break down the data in the database in 3 ways. This is the first slide, is just looking at the distribution of U values and how many manufacturers and how many product lines are actually at this level of performance. The Energy Star database uses the word brand to refer to a manufacturer and a style to refer to an operating type. So for example, an awning window is a style, a single casement window is a style, a double casement window is a style. So that's what they mean. And I would consider, a manufacturer and a style together as being a product line. So we see that at the U factor of, let's use the inch pound numbers for the moment, 0.18, we have a total of 730 product lines in the database. 255 manufacturers offer products at this level of performance. If we go to 0.99 or 0.17, we have 573 product lines, 216 manufacturers offering them. And of course, if we look at the percentage of manufacturers that are involved, 94% of them have products at this level, 80% have products at this level, 64%, 2/3 have products at these level of 0.93 or 0.16, and so on. If we look at the aspirational goal for 2030, it drops down quite a bit. We have roughly 1/3 of manufacturers. But think about that. 1/3 of manufacturers in the Energy Star database have products at a level of performance that has been defined as the aspirational goal. Now, granted, there's not that many manufacturers here at 84th, but it's 1/3 of them, and it's 109 product lines. So out of let's say close to 730 product lines in the database at the most efficient level, only 1/7 of that is at the aspirational goal for 2030. But it's very interesting to note that somewhere between the gateway level for the most efficient category and the aspirational goal of 2030, we have a huge number of manufacturers and products in this zone already today. So this is interesting information in terms of what we can do and where we're at. Another way to look at this information is to break down the distribution of products by U value and by the kinds of products that are available at each U value level that we looked at. What we can see is that all of the operating types are represented at the most efficient level. These are each of the individual categories that are in the database. There's at least a couple of products in each category at U 1.05, at USI 0.99. As the U values get lower, the number of products in each category is lowered, but we see that there are quite a lot of product lines available. So the numbers in the columns here are numbers of product lines. So for example, if we're looking at single casements, at USI 1.05, there's 158 product lines. At 0.99, there's 114 product lines. So this is very interesting. And we see that there's almost as many, if we look at the colored bars here, there's almost as many products at the 0.99 level as there are at the 1.05 level. So we have, it seems to me that it's telling us we have the technology to get to a level that is close to 0.82, which is the aspirational level. Clearly at the aspirational level, there's a small number of products available at this level today. But at a performance level just a little bit less efficient than that, we have a lot of product. This is interesting information. If we look at it from the point of view of window frame materials, we also have something interesting. Now, in this table, the numbers, the quantities are the number of brands or the number of manufacturers offering products at the Energy Star most efficient level. And again, we see that these are all the frame material categories in the database. And we have products, at least one product of each frame material. But the main products, we talk about wood, there's a fair number of manufacturers offering wood products at this level, offering, of course, lots of them offering vinyl products at this level, many fiberglass at this level. These are numbers of manufacturers. And when it comes to things like fiberglass, the number of manufacturers here are probably the number of manufacturers that actually make fiberglass windows in Canada. So you could say that the fiberglass and vinyl are quite well represented. I don't know how many are actually making wood windows in Canada, but it looks like a fair number of the wood window manufacturers are represented. Basically, this is telling us that it's possible to achieve Energy Star most efficient levels in every frame material, and that it's possible to achieve Energy Star most efficient levels by large numbers of manufacturers. So I hope you find this information interesting. To me, it was encouraging. It shows me that we have the technology to get to very close to the aspirational goal of 2030. It shows that we don't need rocket science. We don't need some brand new technology necessarily to help us get there. And given that NRCan has not yet finalized their decision about what the 2030 goal will really be, they've given themselves, I think, until 2022 to actually say for definitively, this is going to be the goal for 2030. So I think the products in the Energy Star database are kind of giving us an indication of what's achievable in a practical point of view. And if we're going to reach a 2030 goal, I think we're going to have to do it with the glass products and the frame materials we have today. And so looking at this database, I think will kind of inform the discussions that are going to happen over the next while in terms of what will be the final aspirational goal and the industry's capacity of reaching it. So at this point, we're not at a stage to propose any specific recommendations in this area. But I think this is the kind of data that I think we're going to look at, with the expert teams and in discussion with Natural Resources Canada. This will kind of help to inform the discussion about where the industry should go. So, basically, this is the end of the content that I will be sharing with you today. And I wonder if we have any questions from any of our viewers on this, Steph.
Yes, we actually do. So Terry's asking, I guess he's referring to the expert group. If someone that has not been invited, can they ask to be included to that group?
That's a good question. You could potentially invite everyone to be involved, but you might have a very large group and it's just going to be unmanageable unmanageable to manage that. What NRCan is looking for here is a collection of people who, we want representation from different sectors. We want representation from different technologies, you might say. So there's, on this experts group, we've got people who make wood windows. We've got people who make other materials. We're inviting companies that actually produce the lineal profiles that manufacturers rely on. We want representation from the insulating glass industry, not just manufacturers. So basically, I would say this is not a completely open group that anyone who wants to can be a part. Basically, in consultation with people who have ideas about what this should be, We've invited the first list of people to
Well,
participate in this group.
yeah.
But the process is not a wide open process where anyone can join. No.
Well,
The process is to have people in the room who know what's going on in their sector and who can contribute meaningfully to discussions about where are we at and where can we get to.
yeah.
And we've tried to be representative about that to get a really fair representation there.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, if someone feels that they should have been invited to that group, I mean, they can always, I guess, reach out to you and see what can be done if they feel that they should have been there. But that, like, it's not your sole decision for sure. But also, like, we do have a good representation there as Fenestration Canada. So if you're a member of FenCan, make sure you participate in the Manufacturers Council.
Yes.
And from that council, like it's not unlikely at all that we'll see groups or a group specifically assigned to this whole NRCan roadmap and market transformation. So if you want to make sure you have a say in what will present on the FenCan side in that group, that's how you do it. That's what I would say about that. So if you can't be part of the expert group, you still can have access to it through us. So use that.
Yeah, and definitely we'll be keeping the Manufacturers Council appraised of everything that's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question, or a comment. It would be beneficial to see the manufacturers from the US taken out of the Energy Star most effective analysis to get a clearer Canadian manufacturer view.
The Energy Star database represents companies that are active in the Canadian market. So we've included all of them in this analysis. I've actually tried to, my next stage of analysis actually was to try and identify the various companies by these kind of, how shall I say, where the manufacturing is done, right? To sort of separate out Canadian plants from American plants. And so I've been working on tracking down that information because it is my intention to do that just to see whether that has an influence on the results here. Because yes, it would be interesting to see also if we look at just Canadian companies, what this distribution is. And so in the next level of analysis, we're going to try to isolate it geographically. In other words, put another filter on the data to do that.
Yeah.
We haven't got to that point yet, though.
Okay.
Well, that's a good comment because we had the same question. We wanted to know, yes, if we just, we don't want to exclude the American companies here. They're members of our associations. They participate in our market. But with respect to the impact of this future regulation on Canadian companies, we do want to sort of filter the data that way as well. And we'll be doing that.
So, yeah, as of now, we don't have more questions. So on that topic.
Okay. So as we'll be, as we progress here, I'll be updating, Fenestration Canada committees about this. We'll be updating the Manufacturers Council and the Technical Services Committee as well on these discussions. And again, I would say, there wasn't, the representation on the experts team is not on the basis of organizations, but there are people who are connected to every of the people that we've invited to the experts team. There are people who are either involved or on the boards of other associations in Canada. So I would say there's nobody who's really left out in the cold, in terms of associations and industry sectors in this process.
Yeah, no, for sure. So is that what concludes your presentation today?
Yes, this basically concludes the update on the market transformation program. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll invite everyone to our next session at 12:30. So it's a French session about labor shortage. especially in Quebec, but we'll touch on the Canadian side too, with an expert from CFIB. So this is still presented by Veka and Everlast. And then at 2 p.m., another French presentation. We're gonna talk with Pierre-Luc Bellavance of Lepage Millwork. So another manufacturer spotlight here. It's going to be really interesting. So I hope I'll see you all there. And Al, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm looking forward to pop in at Pierre-Luc's presentation myself and see what they're up to.
Awesome. Okay, so
Okay.
see you soon.
Okay, thank you.